Well, everyone, it's time for us to go and take a look at the iPad 10th generation and see how this particular iPad holds up in 2024. Now, the thing I will tell you is this iPad is now approaching almost 2 years old this year. So numbers wise, it is about 2 years old, but I will tell you in a lot of different ways, this is by far one of the more interesting iPads Apple has ever made. I don't know if this would be an iPad I'd recommend the average person to buy. I think there are definitely better iPads out there for the average person. I think this one is good if you want to buy a brand new iPad and you already are coming from an Apple Pencil that you already use or something like that. This is probably fine. But if you're just now getting your first iPad, or if you're wanting to go and get an iPad and you're wondering if this one is a good one for the value, there might be better options out there, and I'll explain that throughout this video. But if you want to just go ahead and pick them up, links will be down in the description. You can buy them from there and you can help support the channel at the same time. Now, starting off with the outside of the iPad 10th generation, this particular iPad on the front has a pretty modern looking design compared to the iPad 9, but I thought the iPad 9 looked pretty good too. This particular, device has a 10.9 inch diagonal, IPS panel on it, and it's a good looking panel. I think it looks good. I, again, don't really have that much to complain about with this particular iPad on the front. It does have pretty thick bezels, but they're not ugly or anything. It just definitely looks like an older iPad in a way. Even though it's not that old, it definitely looks a little bit older than the iPad Pros. So that's kind of the best way to describe it. But I will tell you, if you're going to go ahead and buy an iPad, this thing doesn't even look that bad. It actually does have a pretty good display. It has a pretty good build quality to it. I do think it looks pretty similar to something like an iPad Pro, or at least like an iPad Air 4, at the very least. You are getting a little bit few things, compared to the iPad Pros, you're getting a few things removed. So for one, it's not the brightest panel ever, only 500 nits of brightness, really isn't that great. That can be kind of an issue. On top of that, only 60 Hz refresh rate. So you are not getting 120 Hz or anything like that. And once again, that can be kind of an annoying thing for some people. If you're wanting the ProMotion display, you aren't really getting that on this particular iPad. So that can be kind of an annoying thing for some people as well. So kind of keep that in mind, not the end of the world or anything, but it is one of those small things to keep in mind there. You're getting that front camera on the front, which does support the center stage thing, which is actually very cool. On the sides, you are basically getting that flat-sided device, which I like a lot. I love having a flat-sided device like this one, and it definitely is a very, very cool thing. That right there is something that's amazing. And if I'm going to go ahead and basically get a device that basically has a lot of capability, a lot of quality, I'm definitely wanting a device like this one, which is actually very cool. So that right there is another very big thing to keep in mind as well. It's a very good looking iPad. It just functionality wise just is a little bit weird. And honestly, the weirdest thing is that USB Type-C port. The problem with this USB-C port is that you are basically getting essentially the Apple Pencil 1 support, which was the weirdest thing here. I don't know why they threw the Apple Pencil 1 in this thing. I feel like they should have at the very least given us Apple Pencil 2 support. Now that they have the Apple Pencil USB-C, maybe it makes a little bit more sense for this iPad to exist. But with the Apple Pencil 1 with its lightning, connector, that made zero sense. You had to buy a dongle for that with the lightning connector on the side of it. Very, very weird stuff. I really didn't like that at all. And that right there was another very annoying thing going on for this particular iPad as well. If you're going to go ahead and buy an iPad like this and it only has Apple Pencil 1 support, it's a very weird, outdated thing for Apple to do. For a company like them who has all the money in the world, it was a very weird thing for them to do this in the first place. So that right there was another big thing. Again, not the biggest deal in the world, but it was a very annoying thing going on for this particular iPad at that time. So keep that in mind, and that's kind of all I have to say about that. On the back side of this thing, you are basically getting a flat-sided iPad. So this thing looks great. I'm a fan, again, of the way this iPad looks. And once again, I don't have that much to complain about from a looks perspective for this particular device. You do have the, front camera, or the back camera on this thing in the top left corner, which is cool. I love having that there. And overall, it's a very good-looking iPad. Is it missing some things? Yes, but for a budget budget iPad, you essentially know what you're getting here. And I do think that it makes a lot of sense that this iPad kind of exists, or a priced iPad like this exists. I don't know if this one is the one that they should be selling for a super long time like they already have. I feel like they should have already made a successor to this thing. Their iPad sales, I don't think, are doing too well for this particular iPad set. So I think they could be doing a better job here too. I guess once again, we're going to see what happens in the future, but that right there kind of covers up the outside of this particular iPad. Now on top of that, you are getting that camera setup on this thing too, which is genuinely very decent for what you're getting. So it has that 12 megapixel camera on the back, which again is pretty good. You know, it's a decent camera. You can do like up to 5x zoom. There's no ultra-wide camera here, so it's just a very basic, type of camera that you're getting, as you probably would have expected on this type of iPad. You are getting 4K at 60, which is very good. On the front though, you are also getting that 12 megapixel ultra-wide camera, which is very interesting. You can do up to 1080p on that, which is good enough. But the thing is that front camera does have center stage. So that does basically give you the capability of kind of like staying in frame. So as you're kind of moving around, you kind of stay like in the middle of the frame as you're kind of moving around in that particular, FaceTime call or video or whatever you're filming. And it actually is a really nice touch. Having an iPad like this that has that type of capability is actually very cool, and I'm actually a pretty decent sized fan of that. The only problem with this iPad, at least that I can see with this camera, is maybe things like, if you're looking at the camera and you're wanting like a telephoto lens or an ultra-wide camera on the back, again, you're not really going to be getting that here. If you're also going to want like 4K at 60 on the front or, anything higher than that, you're not going to be getting that on this iPad either, but it more or less is kind of what you'd expect. And I really don't think it's like the worst iPad ever made. Like I think it's like an okay camera when it kind of comes down to it for this iPad, setup. So that right there kind of covers it up there. In terms of software longevity, this is also another interesting thing. It's not going to be lasting as long as like the current generation M1 iPad or M2 or M3 iPad Pros, and it's probably not going to be lasting as long as the current iPhones. This iPad has the same chipset almost as like an iPhone 12. So as long as the iPhone 12 is going to last, maybe a little bit longer is what this iPad is going to last. So it's probably going to last like another like a year or two on top of the iPhone 12s. So I would say this thing's still lasting for quite a bit of time. It's not going to be outdated anytime soon, but if you are wanting the longer lasting iPad, or longer lasting iPad for that matter, it's going to be something like the iPad Pros, the current generation iPad Pros. The current generation, even M1 iPad Air is going to last longer probably than this thing. So that's like another small thing to keep in mind. Again, not the biggest deal in the world or anything, but if you again are wanting the more current iPad, it's definitely going to be, or maybe you even want to wait for the iPad 11 at this point, to be honest, if you want the longest lasting one. Performance wise, that Apple A14 chip is in this thing with 4 gigabytes of RAM, which genuinely isn't that bad. Having that set of RAM and having that type of performance on this iPad really isn't that terrible. And there's definitely been iPads that have had less RAM and less performance than this thing that have actually given pretty decent performance. If I'm going to look at an iPad like this though, I do think it's a pretty solid option. I think it's a good performing iPad for the most part. And I've had really good times with these types of iPads as well. Like overall, like if I'm looking at an iPad, it's definitely not that bad, and I do think this can kind of hold its own in a lot of different ways. And I do think it's a very, very good, decent performing iPad from that perspective. If you're a student and you're going to want to take notes, even with that Apple Pencil 1, it's a pretty good experience. If you're wanting to kind of take it up a notch and do, heavy intensive gaming or anything like that, this phone, which again is pretty much on par with the iPhone 12, is still going to be giving you a very good experience, for the most part. The only issue is if you're going to want to take advantage of maybe more desktop-like applications, the M chipsets are going to be better. But this thing is still very good for the most part as well. Battery life is also very good, and it tends to be good on these types of iPads too, which can be like another pretty big advantage for some people out there as well. So to kind of sum up this whole entire video, what I'll definitely tell you is I will definitely look at an iPad like the iPad, 10th generation as a good iPad that I would recommend most people to buy. But I don't think this is the one that I would recommend, everyone to buy. I do think if you're in the market, you can always buy something like the iPad, maybe something like the iPad Air 4 in the used market, an iPad Air 5 in the used market, if you can go down in size, an iPad Mini 6. Or if you want, you can also buy the iPad 9. Those things are so cheap right now, it's not even funny. And those things would also be very solid options for a lot of people as well. So take it as you will, but that's kind of how I see the iPad 10 holding up in 2024. If you have any other thoughts or questions, please let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.